Okay, guys, I'm back. Happy New Year's Eve. I want to talk to you. I'm going to make 2 videos, try to make them short, keep them watchable. I've noticed that I just can't keep them under an hour, so I'm really going to work on making them quicker. I'm going to stay to the non-script, non-edited format. I like that better. Plus, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time trying to make these things look polished or whatnot. But so first thing I want to go back over the Luigi Mangioni case and talk about something that's sort of been irritating me about that whole thing. I'm on the record saying that any support of this guy is coming from the same type of people who celebrated when Trump got shot and who were completely bummed that he didn't die in the assassination attempt. The same people that whenever they're confronted about political violence and resorting to political violence, because they're always pointing the finger at conservatives, accusing conservatives of January 6th and the insurrection, and that we're like scary white supremacists, But whenever you question them or bring back up like the BLM riots or Antifa or anything, it's always like, when you ask their leaders, they talk about Antifa being an idea and completely deny their existence as a group. Or they completely defend the actions of BLM or whatnot. But what I want to talk about is with the Luigi Mangioni case, there's something that really sort of like is standing out to me. Is like the same Department of Justice under Joe Biden that has commuted the death sentences of 37 federal death row inmates. I guess from a philosophy of they oppose the death penalty, is the same federal government that decided to pick up charges and charge him federally under terrorism charges, right? So where they can seek the death penalty. I mean, because otherwise, if they were just going to seek the life in prison, they just let New York take over, which they already are, and that's the other point. So, and like again, I'm no apologist, or I'm not defending Luigi Mangioni for what he did. He's a privileged kid who came from a family with connections to the Pelosi's. That own hospitals and country clubs and skilled nursing facilities. The guy went to like one of the most expensive high school prep schools in the nation. He went to UPenn, Ivy League, and I mean, he was found with like 10 grand in cash. Not a whole lot, but I mean, definitely not poverty. 10 grand in cash on him. And so this kid was definitely not like, and also not a didn't have a policy with United Healthcare, was never denied a claim with United Healthcare. Just basically wanted to be like the hero, wanted to be the martyr, that like stuck it to the insurance companies. And so when, I hear people talking about, or legal experts talking about overcharging him and, was this terrorism? Well, fuck yeah, it was terrorism. I mean, he's the definition of terrorism. He writes a manifesto. He completely plans out an attack with targeting an individual to make a political statement, right? He didn't even have United Healthcare, but he chose the biggest medical insurance company in the country, in the country, but maybe in the world, And he chose to kill that guy because that would make the biggest noise. And so, yeah, I don't think he's overcharged at all. I think he's definitely being charged, as he should be, with trying to influence public policy, trying to influence the culture, trying to influence social, I guess, social change. But it's just it's the people doing it, right? It's the same people that commuted the death sentence of a guy who kidnapped a young mother, raped her, slit her throat in front of her 12-year-old daughter, kidnapped the daughter in the mother's car, so carjacked, raped this little girl repeatedly, crossed state lines, which put it under federal jurisdiction and made it a prosecutable case by the feds, and which is why he was on death row on a federal sentence. Crossed state lines, continued to terrorize this child who is, dealing with the absolute trauma of watching her mom get murdered in front of her. And she's being raped the whole time, kidnapped. I would imagine she's bound, so she can't escape. But I don't know for sure. But the main details I do. And then her throat was slashed before she was dumped in a field and found months later by a local hunter. Now, Joe Biden, being the guy who's super concerned about people being held accountable and nobody's above the law, and all the shit that, he would say whenever people questioned or, confronted him about Trump and, why Trump was being prosecuted and targeted for like these FBI raids and whatnot. Nobody's above the law. Joe Biden found that this guy was worthy of having his death sentence commuted. But in the same week, his Department of Justice, obviously working with Joe Biden to figure out, because, the DOJ would have to be in cahoots with Biden's inner circle in order to pick and choose who they were going to pardon, right? And so he commuted the death sentences of 37 federal inmates that are on death row. He didn't touch 3, so he commuted all but 3 sentences. And of those 37 death row inmates that he commuted, one of them was a person who murdered a woman, kidnapped her child, crossed state lines with her child, making it federal, continued to sexually abuse her until he slashed her throat, dumped her in a field. And Joe Biden, before he leaves office, is wanting to, I'm not sure if he's wanting to absolutely insult the process of the presidential pardon. If he's wanting to, he's certainly spitting in the face of the victims, that's for sure. He's also completely humiliating anybody who defended him as being like a consistent, moral guy, who's consistent on his policies and his beliefs. So he's absolutely destroyed his legacy, if there was anyone. I personally never thought Joe Biden had a legacy. His own, Barack Obama said never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to fuck things up or never underestimate Joe Biden's capacity or ability to fuck things up. So, even President Obama did not believe in this guy. He's, with all the shit people hear about this Eugene Kelly or whatever her name is, who sued Trump for defamation because he said that he didn't rape her in remember the Macy's or the, is it Macy's or Bloomingdale? One of those big, what are they called? I don't know, stores in New York. And the thing is, he like pushed her into a changing room and he raped her, apparently. Whatever. That's I mean, this is the same woman who said to Anderson Cooper that she had fantasies, rape fantasies. But nevertheless, Trump was supposed to be like, everybody was like, Trump's sexually abused this woman. Joe Biden, there's even stronger evidence that Joe Biden sexually accosted, abused, used the power dynamic as a U.S. senator over one of his clerical aides when he allegedly used his fingers to sexually violate this woman named Tara Reid. Now this is backed up by evidence from her mom calling in to Larry King at the time, and asking the question, like, to Larry King live on air, like, my daughter works for a U.S. senator, a prominent U.S. senator. He's done something horrible to her. She doesn't know what to do. What do you suggest? This has all been documented. The voice analysis has been done. It's her mom, and it was Tara Reid's mom. So this is not like one of those things that you can't go back in time and verify. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't a false accusation, but it would have been a false accusation that they got the ball rolling on at the time, 30, 40 years ago. Nevertheless, Joe Biden, the one who's nobody's above the law, everybody should be held accountable, who's pardoning murderers, child murderers, no less, at the same time is wanting to try Luigi Mangioni in the federal courts because he would be death penalty eligible. Now, again, I have no problem with him being charged in the federal courts. I don't have any problem with him being charged with terrorism because he murdered a man in cold blood trying to change public policy, using fear, intimidation to affect essentially change in how we see things, cultural change. So I'm not opposed to any of it. I'm just opposed to the people doing it not being consistent. Joe Biden, who's commuting the sentence of a child killer, while at the same time his same DOJ is choosing to try Luigi Mangioni in the federal courts so that they can get a death penalty sentence. Now, the other part of this, and then I'm going to end this video, the other part of this that I have trouble with is, in America, we have something called double jeopardy. And essentially what that means is a person can't be tried for the same crime twice. And obviously, I mean, it's like the government doesn't have multiple attempts to convict you of a charge. You either prove it beyond a reasonable doubt or beat it. Like, quit trying to ruin my life, And so what double jeopardy does is it tries to limit the government's ability to essentially become a fascist state and imprison you for no reason, or accuse you of things without proof, and then hold you indefinitely as they try you until they get the right conviction, the right outcome. So you have a right to a speedy trial, which means that, when they arrest you and indict you, they better have their shit ready. Now, you can waive the trial as you get experts that are going to refute evidence, and that usually happens in cases where there's a lot of strong evidence against you, and you need to find the right sort of experts that will present alternate theories that provide some sort of doubt that essentially the jury would find reasonable. But the problem with this is that when Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, and I don't think it wasn't Eric Adams, but it's what's the dude who the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, Alvin Bragg, District Attorney of New York, when they had their press conference and they were talking about charging Luigi Mangioni, they had what we knew is that they were making a big show of it, right? And so Luigi Mangioni's message was getting out there. So exactly what this whole thing wants to prevent is exactly what was happening. Like Luigi Mangioni was essentially getting his message out there, and which accounts for all the support he's gotten, right? Is because the government wanting to show that, like, look, crime's not nearly as bad as we're getting, like, as you're hearing in the media, which is absolute bullshit. Everybody knows, like, crime in New York is horrible. People are getting burned on subways. People are getting shot in the street. I mean, it's just horrible, right? And it's because, they volunteered to be a sanctuary city and import millions and millions and millions of people who nobody knows what their criminal background and criminal history is. And I'm not blaming only illegal economic, migrants, but I'm saying that, when you also have policies that don't provide, like, strong deterrence, like long prison sentences and everything's done under the criminal reform laws. It's like doesn't take a genius to know that, like, when you don't have strong incentives to not do something, people that do something will continue to do it, right? Like, anyway, so when the federal government announced that they were going to be picking up these charges and they were going to be they were charging them, they had said that they had sort of been in collusion with the Alvin Bragg and the state prosecution's office, right, the DA's office, and that they were going to allow the state to try their case first, right? And I was thinking, like, well, why would they do that? Like, why would you, the feds have the stronger punishment, the death penalty. So why wouldn't you charge him or wouldn't you try him in the federal courts? And then if you get your death penalty, there's no need to waste the resources, the financial resources, and there's no need to give him any more press and airtime, right? Because he's already gotten that message, and the longer that message of, like, assassinating CEOs of companies that have policies that you don't like, the CEOs of energy companies or the CEOs of, whatever it is that you happen to, like gun manufacturing companies, like, there are people that are crazy enough out there that hate what you do if you do anything that's controversial, right? And if you're the CEO, it could put you at risk, especially when this sort of story hangs out in the news cycle for a long time. It continues to draw psychopaths, the attention of psychopaths. So when the feds had said that they had talked to the New York DA's office, they were going to let New York take the lead and try him first. My thought was, like, well, why wouldn't you, if you're both trying to prosecute him for murder, and New York only has a life sentence available to them, which is their maximum sentence, and the feds are going to be seeking the death penalty, why wouldn't you try him first in the feds? Because if they get their conviction and he's sentenced to death, it makes a life sentence pointless, completely meaningless, right? But then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? And then it hit me. It's like they're basically doing exactly what the Double Jeopardy law was meant to prevent. And that's when you try somebody twice, what you're doing is you're forcing them to hire a defense team and to, you could go broke defending yourself against capital murder, right? And so I mean, this guy won't, because he's got a family with like tons of money, and he's of means to be able to, afford several capital, death penalty cases. I mean, the guy was set to inherit $30 million from his grandmother. So, I mean, the guy's not poor, and he can do it. He'll be able to afford it. But my point is that by trying him in the state courts first, you're forcing him to. And again, I'm not defending him, and I'm certainly not agreeing with what he did. I don't support him. I don't support the people who do support him. I think they're the same scumbags who validate political violence whenever it suits them. But then accuse you of political violence the second there's a riot at the courthouse. They're like, oh, you're a conservative, you're an insurrectionist, you're a violent insurrectionist. We have more to fear from white supremacists than we do. You know what I mean? So, but these are the people that supported the Trump assassination, and what I'm saying is that by trying him in the state court, they're essentially, if they get a conviction, well, he's been forced to pay for that legal defense, but then they're trying him again, so they're essentially trying him twice for the same crime, forcing him to pay for two defenses, right? And the worst part about it, and this is the really sort of the sinister part, is that whenever someone goes to trial and they get a hung jury or whatnot, it's usually beneficial for the prosecution, because the prosecution knows what to do. Well, I mean, what they've done wrong, what they've done right. They can look at what the defense's strategy was. They can look at the defense's witnesses. They have more time to sort of do background checks and vet their witnesses and discredit their witnesses. So when the federal government said that they had talked to the state prosecutors, they were going to allow the state of New York to lead the way and prosecute first. My thought was, why? I mean, because the feds have the more serious punishment of the death penalty. And so any sort of life term is going to not be completely irrelevant once the feds get him and they prosecute him. And remember, feds have a 97% conviction rate. But when they said we're going to prosecute, or that we're going to let them prosecute him first, that's depleting money. It's forcing them to hire two completely different defense teams. And then second, it's allowing the federal jurisdiction, the federal prosecutors, the Department of Justice, to watch this state case, this state court case, very closely, and to analyze what's going on. I mean, even if they get a conviction, right? Even if the state courts get a conviction, they can find out what really works, what didn't work. Now, if he's found innocent, he's still going to get tried by the feds, right? So it's not done, and he can still be sentenced to death. But my point is that more than anything, this double jeopardy is really meant to prevent the abuse of the state. And when I say state, I don't mean the state of New York. I mean the government in general. It's to prevent them from trying you for the same crime twice, because each time they try you, they get better and better and better, and they're able to fine-tune their prosecution theory. They're able to fine-tune their witness list. They're able to fine-tune their arguments, their cross-examination of the witnesses that they've already shown in the first trial. They know how to cross-examine witnesses. They know that the first time when the state of New York prosecuted Mangioni, like what witnesses were like strong, powerful witnesses that didn't, that actually lent the Mangioni defense credibility when they were cross-examined, and then they know the other ones that were like weaker. So by trying him twice, they're forcing a citizen that could be any one of us. I mean, we obviously didn't murder anybody, but what I'm saying is there could be a time when you're unjustly accused of a crime, and you're forced into a situation where you're indicted for a crime on a state level, and then the feds come in and they say that, oh, we're going to try him too because there's a federal nexus to this case, and we can we can sink our teeth into him too. And then instead of the feds taking the lead on the prosecution, they let the state do it, knowing that this is all really a dry run for the main case, which is the federal case that inevitably has the death penalty as the most serious form of, most serious form of punishment. So anyway, that's my theory on, or not my theory, but those are my beliefs on this Mangioni deal. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I want this dude to fry, but I also don't like the idea of Biden's Department of Justice being the ones who are doing it, because in the same breath that they're going after him, they're also commuting death sentences of child killers. And, but for anybody who's been paying attention, for longer than 5 minutes ago, this is all completely expected from Biden. I mean, there's not a single thing he's done in his entire 4 years that hasn't been a complete failure. And so why would this be any different, right? It's not like all of a sudden after the election, he's automatically going to grow a brain and start, making decisions that I would consider intelligent. You know what I mean? This dude's an idiot. He's always been an idiot. He's been exploiting our country for the last 50 years. He's not been a public servant. He's been a person who got into politics to see what he could take and how he could enrich himself. And anyway, so that's my political thought for the day, my political rant. And other than that, we're under 30 minutes, so I'm getting better. I'm proud of myself. You guys take care. I'm gonna be back with I'll be right back.